Hi there, my name is Oliver, and tonight I will be reading chapters 9 and 10 from The Sleeping Dragon, the first novel in the trilogy titled Guardians of the Flame, The Warriors. In this installment, we begin where we left off with Ahira exploring the great library of Pandathaway, while trying not to get bilked out of all his gold, and the other members of the team exploring the city and finding lodgings. Let's get into it. Chapter 9. Maps and Dragons. Wilt thou send up avenues of ill? Pay every debt, as though God wrote the bill. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Karl enjoyed himself as the three of them wandered through the open-air markets of Pandathaway. The markets were a rainbow of sights, sounds, and smells. Dwarf blacksmiths hawking mail shirts and steel plate greaves. Jewelers selling rubies and sapphires in settings both plain and ornate. Food sellers displaying spits of garlic-laden meat and glass bowls of tangy fruit ices. Bakers calling all to sample golden, fist-sized loaves of bread, dripping butter and fresh from stone ovens. The prices were high for most things, although a beer seller let them drink 3 huge tankards for a copper. It occurred to Karl that bread and circuses might have translated into beer and games here. At an armorer's canopied stall, they stopped to haggle with a dwarf blacksmith over the price for charming a blade. Walter had suggested that Andrea's and Aristobulus' spells might earn some extra money if needed. "Well," Karl finally said, quickly bored with the bargaining that the smith seemed to enjoy, "if it's only worth 1 gold for 2 swords to you, it's probably not worth bothering our friends. But we might take you up on it later." The dwarf spat, muttering in some tongue that Karl couldn't follow. "No promises that my offer will stay open. Many wizards in Pandathaway." Walter looked at him, raising an eyebrow. His unvoiced question. Maybe it would be worth it to nail down the deal now? "Out of my way," Doria snapped, shoving her way between Karl and Walter. "You two have the bargaining sense of... Never mind." She slammed her palm down on the weathered counter. "Look, you," she said in Narendra. "We don't have the patience for that sort of nonsense. Understood?" The dwarf spread his hands. "I don't know." "None of that. A charmed sword has to be worth, easily, 150 gold if it has any kind of edge. That would be about twice standard. And you're trying to get these 2 poor fools to agree to half a gold each? Don't bother keeping that offer open. We don't need it." The dwarf chuckled deeply. "Well, it was worth trying for a fast bargain. They look new. You're a hand cleric, aren't you?" "Yes." "It figures. No offense intended, but I don't care for your sect. I'm just an honest armorer and smith, trying to turn a bit of profit, and—" Karl took a step forward. "And cheat us just a little?" "Well," the dwarf shrugged, "maybe take a bit of advantage. From the way you 3 keep spinning your heads around, I figured you might be new to Pandathaway." He eyed Karl's sword. "You any good with that thing?" Karl slipped his right hand to his sword hilt. "I manage." The dwarf held up both palms. "Be easy, friend. I'm not threatening. It's just that I have a few spare coins just now. Since you're new here, the oddsmakers probably will undervalue you. I might be persuaded to put a bet down." Doria nodded. "And give us a good price on a spell or 2. The dwarf dismissed that with an airy wave. "I don't see the need—" Doria reached out and grabbed him by his collar, pushing her face close to his. "You're familiar with healing spells?" The dwarf could have pushed her away with ease. Instead, eyeing Karl and Walter, he nodded slightly. "And," she continued, "have you ever seen one work in reverse?" She ran a fingertip lightly across the dwarf's throat. He shook his head. "Then," she said as she released him, "if you don't want to, maybe you'll stop trying to take advantage of my friends, no?" The dwarf looked curiously at Karl and Walter. "Where did you get this one? I thought that hand clerics were non-violent." "And I didn't know Doria was capable of this sort of thing." Karl eyed her curiously. "She's a new kind." "I'll go along with that. I'll make you a deal. Put her in the games, and we'll all bet on her and get rich as elves. The stupid swordsmen will never know what hit them, eh?" The dwarf laughed, a deep-throated roar that came across as sincere, not just a bargaining technique. "But seriously, if you'll cover half my losses if you don't place, I'll give you, say, 20 gold for glowing a sword, 30 for charming one. Agreed?"
No, Doria said. You'll give us those prices anyway, and your wages are your own profit or loss. Agreed?
The dwarf's mouth quirked into a frown. Can't get away with anything around you, eh? He picked up his hammer and turned back to his forge, pumping his elbows with a muscular arm. Go on now, find somebody else to persecute. If you win, come back and I'll do well by you. As they started to walk away, he called out, And don't bring her with you next time. Karl chuckled. It seems you gained some skills during the transfer that we didn't know about, Doria.
Not quite. She smiled up at him. I spent a summer in Tel Aviv, back at the end of high school. That little dwarf has nothing on the Arab merchants in the Jaffa flea market. You've got to take the first offer as an insult, threaten a bit of violence, then you can get down to business. Otherwise you can end up spending the rent money on a pair of sandals, or take the whole afternoon just picking up lunch.
She glared at both him and Walter, but there was a bit of pride mixed in.
It seems as though the two of you are going to need a keeper, or at least a teacher. Watch.
She paused in front of a fruit vendor's stall and picked out 3 ripe red apples from the slanted bin, examining the backsides of the fruits.
You've got to check for wormholes.
Before pulling a copper coin from her pouch, holding it out to the vendor in offer of payment. The vendor, a frowsy, overweight woman, brushed away the 2 dirty children clinging to her tattered skirts, nodded, and walked over to take the coin. As they walked on, she handed Karl the reddest of the apples, Walter another, and took a bite out of the last.
Good, see?
She said around a mouthful.
If you look like you know what you're doing, you'll save a bit of money and a lot of time.
Karl crunched a bite out of the apple. It had been too long since his last meal aboard the Pride. The cool, sweet fruit tasted almost too good. We've still got to find out when the next games are. He eyed the afternoon sun, and then get back to the fountain. I make it about 3 hours till sundown. Walter took a last bite out of his apple and threw the shreds of the stem and core away. I could use another beer. No. That was a rule he'd learned back when he was a freshman. Always set your limits before you have your first drink. Let's walk this way. Ahira found the librarian in charge of the Room of Gold and Grey to be an unlikely occupant of the post. The man was tall and well-muscled, his shoulders straining at the seams of his gold-trimmed grey woolen tunic, as he bustled over to the door to greet the dwarf and dismiss Ahira's escort. Welcome, welcome to the Room of Gold and Grey, he boomed. His voice was a deep baritone, his hand-clasp firm and friendly. I am Maureen. I am the specializing librarian in charge of... He interrupted himself to chuckle. All that you now survey. And you are? Ahira.
And I am also confused.
This librarian's manner was diametrically opposite to Calusius's. Ahira, the librarian repeated, drawing up 2 3-legged stools, seating himself on the shorter one and gesturing Ahira to the other. This will let us have our eyes on the same level, or close to it. Please, make yourself comfortable. You are both my first patron of the day, and my first dwarvish patron ever. Let us enjoy the moment, shall we? Do I get charged extra for the friendly treatment? Orion's brow furrowed under a shock of brown hair. Friendly? Oh, Calusius is on greeting duty today, isn't he? I haven't seen the old bastard for months. Does he still look as though he'd just discovered half a maggot in his meat? Ahira chuckled. Quite. Orion shrugged. Well, it's his own fault. He never specialized, you see. Instead of trying to learn one room, he went in for indexing, trying to learn what is kept where. Orion punctuated the words by thumping himself on the knee. He wants to be chief librarian someday. Which he may be, though I doubt it. And in any case, he is certain to be unhappy in the interim. Orion gestured at the shelves and racks lining the small, bright room. As for me, I know every page of every book, every section of every scroll here. Vellum maps and hand-copied books, printed scrolls and explorer's notes. I know them all. Orion folded his thick arms across his chest, which makes me the master of all I see, and a happy man. Now, what is it that we're looking for today? I'm trying to find a map that will show me where the Gate Between Worlds is, if you've ever heard of... There is no such map. Orion held up a hand. But please, let me show you... He stood, sucking air through his teeth, and walked over to a scroll rack, flipping aside several scrolls before selecting one. I think that this will give you the best overview of the situation. Ahira beckoned Ahira over to a wide table and rolled the scroll open, carefully pinning his selected panel open with 4 springy clamps. My own design, these clamps. They keep the scroll firmly open, without hurting it at all. You see, here we are, Pandathaway. The librarian held his finger over the designated spot, not touching the yellowed parchment. I could show you the floor plans of most of the structures here. Do you follow me so far? Yes, but be patient for a moment, friend Ahira. Be patient. We now move north and east. His finger traced a path through a scattering of upside-down V's, where we reach the Erstil Mountains, and Eric there. This is the trade route into the mountains. We have much contact with the area, so I could show you maps of the land holding around Eric. Contour maps, if you're familiar with them. Much of the land is on its side. His finger went farther north. Now, here's a problem. The Waste of Elrud. Do you know of it? No. Ahira's friendliness tempted Ahira to be more complete, but it was better to be safe. I'm new to this area. Oh? Ahira's lifted eyebrow invited him to go on. I believe you were saying something about their waste? Ahira nodded. It was almost 1,000 years ago. I don't have the date on the tip of my tongue, but I could get it for you if you want me to. It was 1,000 years ago that 2 powerful wizards dueled on the plain of Elrud. It was a lush farmland back then. They destroyed everything around them for a great distance. Now it's devastated. Nothing grows. He shook himself. But you passed through just the edge of the waste, and... Wait. Ahira indicated a patch of green in the large brown circle that marked the waste. What's this? I thought you said it was all destroyed. That's farmland or forest, isn't it? Very good. Ahira's smile held no trace of condescension. That's the forest surrounding the home tabernacle of the Society of the Healing Hand. Oh, you know the society? Slightly, Ahira admitted. I have a friend who is a member. In a manner of speaking, that is. Ahira stood back, impressed. Really? They're powerful healers. Their Grand Matriarch is said to be able to raise the dead, although I couldn't swear to the truth of that. I've never heard of a hand cleric talking about it, though. He snorted. On the other hand, the damn spider sect clerics claim they can do anything, and they lie. But, as I was saying, the matriarch is most powerful. She fully protected the tabernacle and its grounds from the battle. Ahira frowned. I thought you said it was a long time ago. Hundreds of years, no? Ahira's face wrinkled. Where are you from, friend Ahira? What do you mean? There was a challenge in Ahira's voice that made Ahira's hands itch for the handle of his battle axe. The librarian sighed and shook his head. My apologies. It's not my place to pry. But it must be a strange land where powerful clerics can't maintain their own life functions. The James Michael part of him welled up with an image of old Father Mendoza, his parish priest, who had collapsed with a heart attack while celebrating Mass and died a few hours later. It was strange, come to think of it. Why couldn't the gods, God, take care of his own? He shook his head. That was beside the point. The problem was how to deal with Ahira. Possibly the best thing to do would be to lay his situation before the librarian, and ask his advice. But how could he put it? I used to be a cripple on another world, until a would-be wizard sent me here to clear the way for him. No, that wouldn't do. Just because magic worked here didn't mean that there was nothing that the locals wouldn't consider insane. And how do they treat the insane here? Beat them to drive the demons out? And might that even work here? It might, at that, but the cure could easily be worse than the disease. You were showing me the route, I believe. Ahira looked at him for a long moment before shrugging. Very well. As I was saying, I can't show you detailed maps of the waste, simply because nobody has ever made one. At least, not to my knowledge. Anyone going through there would be more interested in getting out than they would be in map-making. He smiled. And to every rule, an exception. I could show you a map of the road from Matrail to the Tabernacle of the Healing Hand. His finger hovered over a line from a lake to the green spot that marked the forest preserve of the Society. But that would take you out of your way. Far out of your way, if you're going to Bremen. Bremen? Bremen. Ahira tapped at a lone, inverted V near the waist. That's where the gate between worlds is supposed to be. I have a description, no map, just some notes, of an entrance into the mountain. 100 years back, someone gave up on finding the gate when he was just outside of the mountain. So I can show you where that is, but I can't show you a map of the inside of the mountain, simply because nobody who has ever gone in has ever come out again, to tell the tale. Of course. Irene was puzzled. What do you think I've been getting at? An easterly wind brought a stink to Karl's nostrils, as the three of them walked along a quiet cobblestone street. It was a stench of dung and sweat and fear. He was about to pick up the pace, to urge the others along, when Walter plucked at Karl's sleeve. I think there's a slave market over that way. I can just barely hear an auction. You two want to go look? The thief shrugged. I know we can't spend any serious money right now, but it might be worth our while to find out how much some bearers cost. Could be cheaper. He was interrupted by the crack of a distant whip, immediately followed by a scream of pain. Walter winced. Then buying horses and such. Karl shook his head. We won't own people. It's wrong. Doria frowned at Walter.
How could you even think of such a thing? That's
thinking it through, which you two aren't. Look, what would we do with a bunch of slaves after we reach the gate? We'll let them go, no? In effect, it'd be more like a temporary indenture than real chattel slavery. They'd trade a bit of service for their freedom. No. Karl clutched his sword more tightly. That's out. Just forget about it. One of the few virtues our world has is... Don't be silly. In our world, it's been the norm for most of history. Even in our time, chattel slavery isn't unknown. It's still legal in half a dozen places I can think of. Saudi Arabia, for instance. I won't stand for it.
You don't own people. It's wrong.
Doria interposed herself between the two of them.
Just let it be. We're supposed to be seeing the sights, no?
Fine. The street sloped gradually downward as it narrowed, the 1- and 2-story stone houses that lined it becoming progressively more ill-kept. Through latticed windows, Karl could see an occasional head peering out at him, ducking aside when he returned the occupant's gaze. Idly, he let his free hand rest on the hilt of his sword, loosening it in its scabbard. Probably that was an unnecessary precaution, but that was the trouble with precautions. You couldn't know which one was necessary until it was too late. Ahead of them, where the now narrow street opened into some sort of plaza, there was a distant roaring, as though of a fire. Fire? Karl sniffed the air. No good, the wind was at his back. You two hear that? Doria and Walter nodded, stepping up their pace to keep abreast of him.
Sounds like a fire, Doria said.
A fire? This whole place is built out of stone. There can't be a fire. Bets? They reached the end of the street. What had seemed to be a plaza was more of a large railed balcony, overlooking a vast pit, easily 2,000 feet across, 100 feet deep at its center. And in the center of the pit, chained by the neck to a massive boulder, was an only slightly less massive dragon. It was a huge brown beast, easily twice Karl's height at its front shoulder, only slightly shorter at the hips. 2 leathery wings sprouted from behind its shoulders, curling and uncurling constantly, as the dragon flamed patches of brown muck into ash and steam, its tail flicking nervously from side to side. The head was a horror. It was shaped much like an alligator's head, but it was massive, teeth easily the size of daggers, wicked red eyes that bore into Karl's, sending him reeling away from the pit's edge. A gout of flame issued from its mouth, roaring as it touched the stream of sludge that poured out of one of the pipes feeding into the pit. Go away, sounded in his head, accompanied by waves of nausea. Karl fell to his knees, gagging, his tearing eyes jammed shut. Karl? Walter knelt beside him. What happened to you?
Karl? Are you all right?
Doria's face went ashen as she crouched in front of him. Another burst of flame sent up a cloud of steam from a sludge pipe. Karl forced his eyes open. No, there was nobody else there. All of the buildings that circled the pit presented it with only blank walls. After all, no one would want to look out on a sewer, would he? This time, the voice was unaccompanied by nausea. Karl staggered to his feet, wiping his mouth on the back of his hand. You're talking. In my head. Very clever, swordsman. The dragon's directionless voice dripped with sarcasm.
And you are talking with your mouth. And the mixed-up little healer and the smug thief beside you are standing mute. Have you any more subtle observations to make? If not, please taunt me in my captivity, and then be on your way.
The dragon's forepaw idly clawed at the coils of chain around its neck. No, it wasn't chain, exactly. More like cable. And in spots where the filth that covered it had flaked away, specks of gold showed through.
That is so I can't flame myself free, fool. Were I so foolish as to try, I would only burn myself.
It had tried that more than once. The gold plating on the steel cable conducted the heat away, to the dragon's neck. Karl's hands flew to his burning neck, circled by a ring of fire. But the fire wasn't there. The pain faded instantly, until it was only a memory, as distant as a half-forgotten pain from a childhood fall.
How do you like the feeling, human? Your kind.
No, not me.
Karl, would you...
Shut up. You're not hearing my voice, are you?
Why would I be interested in your voice?
I don't know. But how can your own flame burn you? And why are you angry at...
A magical creature the dragon is, but not immune to flame, to heat, to burning. I control my own flame, of course, but the indirect effects, no. And I hate you because... Wait. Who are you? My name is Karl Cullinane. This is Doria and Walter. And I don't know why you're angry at me. I never did anything to you. I am Elagon, the disposer of wastes.
I don't understand.
Wait until the wind changes, Karl Cullinane. This pit is where the sewers of Pandathaway empty, so as not to foul their precious harbor. I must flame the wastes into ash, or sit here buried in human filth. They captured me when I was only a half a century out of the egg, and chained me here, dumping their excrement on me for these 3 centuries.
You're more than 300 years old? The dragon had been chained in sewage for 3 centuries. It let Karl feel what that was like, for just a moment. As he lay retching on the stones, Walter pulled at his shoulders. Come on, we've got to get him out of here. It's killing him.
Yes, I'm only a child. Do you think it's right to treat a child like this? Do you?
Nausea. Karl shrugged their hands away, closing his eyes, trying to close his mind. Please, don't do that again.
You wouldn't have done it? No, I see that you wouldn't. Not even to a dragon.
The nausea ceased.
Take it easy, you two. Everything's okay.
No, I wouldn't do it to a dragon. Karl would kill a dragon if it endangered him, if he could. But this was wrong. Karl had felt just a trace of Elagon's suffering, and that was more than enough. Unless the dragon wasn't as sensitive to...
Do you want to feel it again?
No. This was wrong, but it didn't look as though there was anything that Karl could do about it. The dragon looked hungry, and the cable was thick.
I am hungry, and I haven't asked you to cut the cable. Not that I need to eat. Dragons are magical, don't you know? We like to eat.
The satisfaction of crunching a cow, eating it in 2 bites, sent the last traces of nausea away.
But we don't have to.
I didn't know. I didn't know anything about dragons. A mental shrug.
Are you stupid or merely ignorant?
Just ignorant, I hope.
I have a proposition for you. If I do 2 things for you, would you do 1 thing for me?
That depends. You can't...
I can't reach your mind from much farther away, yes. You could run away, and I wouldn't be able to talk to you, or do this.
Don't! I don't want you to make me vomit again. But you were offering me a proposition? I'm not sure I trust you enough to go down there and try to free you. Flame roared.
Fool. I wasn't asking for that. Not from a filthy human. But if you could see your way to bringing me something to eat, a sheep, maybe, I'll do something for you. I'll start by telling you something you need to know if you are going to find the gate between worlds, Karl Cullinane.
How do you know? Blistering scorn.
I read minds, remember?
Elagon roared. Sorry, and yes, if I can afford a sheep. If you do something for me that makes it worthwhile, I'll bring you one. Or something else to eat, if I can't manage to buy a sheep.
Agreed. First, you will find the gate deep under the mountain Bremen, just north and west of the waste of Elrude. And...
I thank you, but maybe Ahira...
I know. Your companion may already have found that out. I wasn't finished. I was going to tell you something else. Something that he could not have found out. Something that I know simply because I am a dragon and know where all of my kind are.
Karl, what is...
Shut up. I'm talking to the dragon.
You're talking to a dragon?
Yes, he's talking to a dragon.
Walter and Doria both jumped, as Elagon included them.
But it's easier to talk to only one.
You were telling me that there's a dragon there, at the gate. That was bad, but maybe, if they were lucky, the dragon wouldn't be as large as Elagon.
No, he won't. He will be much larger. He has lain there long enough for the mountain Bremen to grow up around him, as he sleeps there, guarding the gate.
Wonderful. He turned to the others. Elagon just told me that there's a dragon at the gate, guarding it. Karl, Doria shrilled, would you tell me what is going on?
Tell them to go away. Their minds are even narrower and more cramped than yours. Although the woman's holds more. Strange. And the other's is built differently, as though it's not quite the same kind. I don't understand.
Ask him, Walter said, what the other dragon's name is. Maybe Ari can put together a name spell and...
Fool.
I heard that. Walter glared.
And fool you are. He was the first dragon, created before all the rest of us.
So?
So, in the old days, when there was but one thing of his kind in all the world, why would he have need of a name? Just so, billions of years later, some stupid human could cast a spell using it? No, he is the dragon, oldest of us all, and has no need of a name.
So, what can we do to protect ourselves against him?
Don't wake him. He is older than the mountain, and you could break the mountain more easily than you could dent the smallest of his scales. Karl Cullinane?
Yes?
I have done one thing for you, no? Will you bring me my sheep now, or must I do the other?
You make that sound like a threat, and I don't like threats, Elagon.
Very well.
Elagon sighed mentally.
Then I will let you understand.
Understand what? The universe fell apart. He was 15, and a nice Jewish girl. Or, at least, she was supposed to be. But there were things she wasn't supposed to be, and things she wasn't supposed to do. Like grope in the dark with Jonathan Dolan, and slip out of...
Enough? Or do you really want to understand Doria?
You're letting me into her memories? Why?
So you will understand.
No, wait. And she couldn't tell Daddy, of course. He called her his one and only. and Mommy thought she was still a virgin. That was one of the rules. You don't talk about it. But it wasn't only that she was late. There was this burning. And that damn Johnny Dolan was telling everybody that she'd given him the clap. And that couldn't be true. It couldn't. He was the first, and the only one so far. And it hadn't even been any fun. Just a sticky mess. He lied. They all lied. It wasn't any fun at all.
You still don't see it.
But I can't tell anybody. Besides, it's probably not that. Maybe if I just forget about it, it'll go away?
I think, perhaps, just a bit more.
She's a sick little girl, Mr. Pearlstein. But with a bit of luck, we'll have the fever down in a few hours. She lay panting beneath the plastic, no longer able to paw at the tubes in her nose and arms. They'd fastened her hands down. But it can't be gonorrhea. Not my little... You know, Mr. Pearlstein, you make me sick. Doctor, If she'd been able to tell anybody. If she'd felt able to tell anybody. If there'd been one goddamn person for her to talk to, maybe she wouldn't be lying there now. We could have treated it easily if we had gotten to it. Before. Before it grew into one hell of a raging pelvic infection that'll leave her sterile if it doesn't kill her. Sterile. My little... Sterile. Unable to conceive. Ever. If we're lucky. Nurse. A cold hand felt at her forehead. I want a temp and BP every 5 minutes. If her temp doesn't start to drop within the hour.
And the last portion of the payment.
And I guess it doesn't matter anymore, and besides, in a lot of ways I'm perfect, because nobody ever has to worry about getting Doria Pearlstein pregnant, ever, which means that every cloud has a silver lining, because now I can have any boy I want to, but they all treat me like I was a cigarette they pass around, and I guess that doesn't matter, because that's what I deserve, isn't it? Because...
Enough.
Karl, are you okay? I don't care what he said, Walter. We've got to get him out of here. No, wait. I think he's coming around. Karl pried an eye open. Doria and Walter bent over him, concern creasing their faces.
It's okay,
he said, not surprised to hear his voice coming out as a harsh croak.
Help me up.
What did he do to you? Doria asked. He hurt you again, that... Shh. Understanding, eh?
Understanding. It's not always easy to understand things, Karl Cullinane. Even I know that.
She doesn't know?
No, of course not. Why would I want to hurt?
You would have killed us a few minutes ago, if you could have reached us.
A different thing entirely, no?
A different thing entirely.
Will you get me my sheep now?
Elagon asked plaintively. Karl walked slowly to the railing and stared out at the dragon. You two keep watch. I've got a debt to pay. What did it do to... Shh.
Then I get my sheep.
No. He slipped out of his sandals, using their thongs to lash his scabbard to his shoulders.
No? Then you are like all the rest, you...
Shh. Just be quiet for a moment. Karl Cullinane pays his debts. That was the rule. And even if the debt came out of a window into Doria's mind, a window that he wouldn't have wanted to look through. And to think I treated her like...
You didn't know. What are you doing?
Karl levered himself over the railing. Good. The rock face below was rough and cracked. There would be many finger and toe holds. I took up rock climbing one summer. Hey, why are you asking? I thought you could read my mind, even what I'm not consciously thinking about.
Not now. There's an intensity.
Shh. I've got to pay attention to what I'm doing. He picked his way carefully down the face, ignoring Doria's and Walter's shouted questions from above. You can't turn off my sense of smell for me, can you? He thought, as he lowered himself into the ankle-deep foul muck.
No. You're really going to do it? Thank you. I'll leave. I'll fly away. I will. Please, Karl. Please don't change your mind. Please.
Shh. Stumbling and gagging at the stench, he started to walk towards Elagon. Never mind, Karl. He's been in this for 300 years. As he got closer, it became shallower. A harder surface beneath the ooze supported his bare feet. The dragon loomed above him, its breath coming in short gasps, its wings curled protectively by its sides. Lower your neck, will you? If there's a weak point in this cable, it'll probably be there, where you can't see it. Elagon knelt in the filth, his huge head just inches away from Karl. His mental voice was strangely silent as he presented his barrel-like throat. It was a cable, and like all cables made up of smaller strands. It took a moment for Karl's sword tip to snick through the first strand, and a moment longer for the next. Easy, my friend, easy. Just a few dozen more. He had to stop to quell his gagging reflex. Wading through this sewer was something he'd try to forget. And he cut through the last strand. Done. Elagon's massive head tilted at him.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Shh. Better get going. He slipped his sword back in its sheath.
Grab my neck,
the dragon said, its mind muttering a background of,
Free. Free, I'm free.
Karl reached out, and as he did so, the creature's wings flapped, blurring with speed as it eased into the air, then whirred over to the balcony, Karl dangling for a moment, then dropping to the tiles.
Free. One more thing,
Elagon said, landing.
Look out, Karl, he's going to...
The dragon's mouth opened, and a gout of flame rushed out, enveloping Karl. Just flame, no heat, although the reeking muck covering much of his body burst into fire, sparkling and burning away.
My flame couldn't hurt you, Karl Cullinane. Not you. Not now.
It tingled pleasantly, and that was all. He turned in the fire stream, letting it wash over him like a shower.
Free.
The flame stopped. Better get going. With a snap of his wings, the dragon jumped skyward, his wings just a blur as he left the balcony and the pit behind him.
Free.
Fly away, my friend. 3 times the dragon circled overhead, gaining height as he flew.
Free.
Karl, Doria said, shaking her head, would you mind telling us just what's going on?
I think we'd all better get out of here, folks, Walter said, moving them along. When the authorities find out about this, they aren't going to be all that pleased.
Elagon flew off toward the north, now so high he was only a dark speck against the blue sky.
Free.
Karl, why? Doria asked.
He slipped one arm around her waist, the other around Walter's as they walked away.
Because I never felt this good in my whole damn life. Free.
That was faint now. Did he hear it, or just imagine it? It really didn't matter. Not at all.
Free.
Chapter 10. The Inn of Quiet Repose. We may live without poetry, music, and art. We may live without conscience, and live without heart. We may live without friends, we may live without books. But civilized man cannot live without cooks. Edward Bulwer Lytton, Earl of Lytton. Walter Slovatsky suppressed a chuckle at Andrea's bubbly enthusiasm as she led the group down a broad street toward the Inn of Quiet Repose.
You should see it, she said, hurrying them along. And I got a fine deal for the suite. It's going to cost us just 100 gold for the next 10 days.
100 gold? By local prices, that wasn't much at all. Walter shrugged. Either she had landed them in some horrid hovel, or her charm spell had been awfully effective. Apparently, Ahira had the same idea. If you've charmed whoever's running it, it won't...
Nope. She took a smug, prancing step. The owner has an amulet around his neck. One, he thinks, wards that kind of spell away.
She spread her hands.
But it doesn't have any kind of aura at all. Either it's dead, or it's a phony. But here we are.
The inn was a 3-storied edifice, a marble mansion like a stone version of something out of Gone with the Wind. Tall, fluted pillars guarded the broad staircase. The foyer was a vast, soundless room, with deep, blood-red carpets that seemed to suck the weariness out of Walter's legs. He smiled as he tilted his head back to enjoy the mural that spanned the high ceiling. Chubby nymphs chasing unicorns through a green glade. He started to lower his pack to the floor, but 6 young women in filmy white kimonos descended on them, relieving them of all their burdens, as others arrived bearing silver trays laden with steaming cloths to bathe their hands, feet, and faces, and yet others carrying thick towels to pat them dry, and tall, frosty glasses of ice and wine. And all this when they were barely inside the door. Walter nodded. I think I'm going to like this. And then, for a moment, he had his doubts. A huge man, yards of yellow silk caftan barely containing his oversized belly, stepped from behind a curtain. Well, it seems as though you were correct, my little friend. He scowled down at Andrea, easily half again her height. Walter tried to guess his weight. 350? 400, perhaps? I wouldn't have believed there was so scruffy a group if... But never mind. Pay no attention. Tomorrow is but ranting again. And these are guests. Their way has been paid. He stopped himself, rubbing a finger against his almost impossibly aquiline nose, then shook his head. My guests, will you go to your suite now, or would you care to dine first? Ahira spoke up. Is there a bath? You insult me! The owner stood back, his hands on his hips. This, my dear sir, is the Inn of Quiet Repose. Nowhere, I say nowhere in glorious Pandathaway will you find an establishment so well kept, so replete with every facility necessary to provide a guest ease or comfort. Every comfort. Walter looked the nearest of the serving girls up and down. Quite a difference from the ugly, unbathed serving girls of Lundale. Then he glanced at Karl. On the other hand, maybe the stupid swordsman would give him trouble over that. Couldn't he see that there was a difference between here and home? When in Pandathaway? The owner was still talking. You will even discover, perhaps I should save this. No. You will find that your suite's bath is complete with running water, requiring only the merest turn of a valve for its use. He stamped his bare foot soundlessly on the carpet. And you will find your rooms to be quiet. Your sleep will be deep and sound and filled with only light, pleasant dreams. Our table is the finest, with food... He smacked himself on the forehead. But I forget my manners. I am Tomalo, your host for the next 10 days, and at an unusually low fee. Again his forehead wrinkled, as though he were trying to figure out why he had agreed to such a relatively small charge. He glanced at Andrea and Aristobulus in their gray robes. It's as though... But no, he murmured. I've a token to ward that away. But perhaps its potency has fled? No, pay attention, Tomalo, for you have guests, and yet to find out what their pleasure is, you old fool. Letting your mouth run free when... Ahira held up a hand. I'm for the bath first. I suppose everybody else is, too. Not me. Those were the first words out of Karl since they'd left the sewage pit. The stupid... But never mind. I've got to help Jimmy contain the damage. Not sure what kind of police force they have here. Not really. But whatever kind they have is going to be looking for Karl. And they'll be bloody unlikely to overlook his accomplices. I managed, Karl went on, to get myself cleaned up earlier. Right now I could use some food. Anyone else? Well, that might have been true for Karl, but Walter hadn't been cleansed by fire, and had no desire whatsoever to try it out. He scratched at his arm. The itching from lack of bathing had subsided into a dull background of irritation, but now there wasn't anything he wanted more than a bath. Except survival, and that means I'd better keep an eye on Mr. Cullinane. I need some food, too. Walter patted at his stomach. Been a long time since breakfast. Tomalo? Yes? The innkeeper beamed at him. Snacks. I have a fresh, pungent beetle paste. Or would you prefer something more substantial? Beef? Ah, the cooks have a wonderful roast in the pit. Hind leg of a virgin heifer, marinated in wine and herbs for a week, then cooked in a vat with... Enough! Aristobulus held up a hand. Let us get to it, shall we? Andrea nodded, as did Doria. Ahira shook his head. The rest of you go along. I'll head up to our suite and get myself a bath and a nap. Tomalo snapped his fingers. A buxom blonde led the dwarf away. And for the rest of you, would you care to dine in the common room, or... Walter shook his head. We need some privacy. The innkeeper tilted his head, smiling knowingly. Ah, and will you require an additional wench, or... We're fine the way we are. Tomalo nodded, and conducted the 5 of them down a hallway, to a staircase, then up 2 flights to another hallway, and finally to a room at the corner of the building. 2 walls composed mainly of open windows and bead-curtained exits to the veranda outside. He bowed them in, waiting until everyone was seated on a bench at the massive oak table, before clapping his hands together. Wine for my guests, he commanded the air. As though they had been waiting behind the curtains, 3 women stepped out, bottles in hand, along with heavily laden trays. Bowls and small, sharp knives were set in front of them, along with serving dishes of buttery corn, served on the cob with a tangy brown sauce, small fowl, squab perhaps, the skin broiled to a perfect golden crispness, a purple paste that was somehow sour and hot and sweet all at the same time, and delightfully so. Tomalo bowed. "Enjoy yourselves, my guests. If you have any desire at all, you need merely snap your fingers, or, when in your room, pull a bell rope." He left, but the servitors kept bringing platters of food, setting them down and leaving. Walter sampled a knobby sheet of bread. The bulges turned out to be a cheesy orange filling, a strange combination of flavors, but a delightful one. He debated for a moment whether to reach for another helping, or sample the steaming slices of beef and lamb, or the silver tureen of leeks floating in a clear broth, before deciding to take all 3 and more of the bread. There was no sound for minutes, except for the noises of chewing and frequent oohs and ahs as all sampled the fare.
"Do we talk here, or stupid?"
"Everybody," he said in English. "No Arendra. Just keep the talk in English, understood?" Aristobulus shook his head. "No," he said around a mouthful of fowl. "I don't understand. We've got nothing to hide." "We do now." Walter jerked his thumb at Karl, who was silently chewing on an ear of corn, careless of the way the sauce was dripping on the tabletop. "Genius here decided to ruin the city's sewage system." He looked over at Andrea. "And besides, we don't want the staff to overhear how we got the cut-rate price on the lodgings, do we?" Andrea shook her head. "I wouldn't worry about it. As I said, Tomalo isn't the sort to talk things over with his employees, and—"
"Not employees," Karl growled. "Let's at least keep it honest."
"They are so employees, stupid. Slufmelrad, to be precise." Slufmelrad. Fealty servants. Walter shrugged. It had taken a while to get used to the way that oddities of the Arendra language awakened knowledge that he hadn't known he'd had, but it had become a frequent phenomenon.
"And, come to think of it, when I get some spare time, it'd be worthwhile to run through every Arendra word I know and try to integrate all that."
"Oh." Karl shrugged, smiling awkwardly at a slender girl who looked to be about 13. She deposited another clay bottle of wine on the table before leaving.
"Just women?"
"No." Andrea smiled broadly. "Male servants, too. And one of them—"
"Enough."
Walter rubbed at his temples. Granted, the 2 of them had had a good time together aboard the Gannis's Pride, but it hadn't been that good. And the way she rubbed Karl's nose in her right to, something had to be done about that.
"You're a fine one to talk, Walter Slovatsky. You've never made any pretense with Doria that she was your one and only."
"We'll talk about it later." Then again, that was different. For one thing, unless he was totally misreading Karl, and Andrea was a liar, those 2 had never gotten together. And, damn it, he didn't rub Doria's nose in it. Ever.
Complications. Everything's got complications.
And Jimmy was probably the heart of one of the worst of them. Why hadn't he made a play for Doria? It was as clear as anything that the little guy wanted her, and here it might work. Or would that be some sort of perversion, come to think of it? What would you call it? Humanality? He shook his head. It'd probably take Jimmy a while to work things out. If he slept with Doria, was he, Ahira, being queer for humans? And if he made it with a female dwarf, was James Michael—
"The trouble with me is that way down deep, I'm shallow. My best friend is finally in a situation where he can be a whole person, and all I worry about is whether that's a perversion of some sort. And whether I have to sleep alone tonight."
He caught Doria's eye, tilting and raising his chin in an unvoiced question. She glanced at Karl, then at Andrea, frowned, and nodded.
"Well, at least that's taken care of. That's the trouble with me, though. I'm just a slave to my hormones and digestive juices."
He reached out and speared another slice of red, rare beef. "Sewage system?" Aristobulus looked over. "You mean that little dragon? How'd you hear about it?" "I spent some time in the wizard section of the library. Chatted with a few guild members taking a break from doing some research. Found out some interesting things between my reading and talking."
"Well?"
I think I'll save it for later. There are some calculations I want to recheck. But for now, did you realize that this whole guild's council thing is a sham?" Karl frowned. Wait a minute, You didn't spend the afternoon with some of the people who really run Pandathaway, Karl. It's the wizards. The rest are just window dressing. Which is why we don't have to worry about our host getting angry, even if he does find out what Andrea did. Aristobulus smiled smugly. Assaulting any wizard is a capital crime. Ditto an authorized cleric, member of any of the 5 recognized sects. Including, he nodded to Doria, the Hand, by the way. The wizard frowned and shook his head. I'd leave you all right now if it wasn't. Damn me, I've got a mind like a sieve. Ever since he had learned about the Great Library, Walter had worried that Aristobulus might choose to leave the group in Pandathaway. He hadn't said anything. Nothing could be done about it. If Aristobulus wanted to go, he could. And why won't you? Aristobulus took a long swig of wine before answering. It's the damn spell books again. He drained the mug and slammed it down on the table. I may be good, but I'm not a Wizards Guild member. So, if and when I apply for membership, I'll be better off having a set of books of my own. Otherwise I've got to apprentice of all things. Walter chuckled. The notion of Aristobulus apprenticing to some other wizard was almost absurd. Ahira was pretty far along as a wizard. It was unlikely that there were many others in Pandathaway as powerful as he was, but it was a certainty that there were plenty of wizards who could gang up on him and make him toe the line. How long an apprenticeship? He scowled. Until my master decides that I'm worthy. He shook his head. And that's not the worst of it. All apprentices in the guild have to submit to being put under guise. Now that was bad for Aristobulus, but good for the rest of them. A guise would rob him of his ability to disobey his master's orders, and it was unlikely that any master wizard would want to dispense with the services of someone with skills as developed as Ares. Normally the trade-off between master and apprentice, in any profession, was that of training in the craft for doing all the trivial grunt work. But Ahira was capable of doing much more than preparing a potion under supervision. Whatever guild wizard he'd be apprenticed to would quickly find his services indispensable. But it was good for the group, at least. With a lifetime of apprenticeship to look forward to if he stayed in Pandathaway, Aristobulus was certain to stay with the group, at least until they reached the gate, and Dayton. You're assuming that Doc will furnish you with another spellbook or two. Very good. The wizard popped a ball of deep-fried prawns and garlic into his mouth. And then I'll come back here, apply to the guildmaster, and live off my earnings and the stipend guild members get, just like all the others. He chuckled, including the extra earnings from selling phony charms, like the one Tomalo has. The fool. Why would the wizards bother to sell him a real protection when he can't tell the difference? As Karl reached for his 3rd helping of beef, the wizard cocked his head. I thought you're supposed to go light on food before. Before what? The games, stupid. The every 10 days ones are tomorrow, aren't they? I thought that's what... Aristobulus wrinkled his brow. You mean you didn't bother asking anyone about them? I thought... Walter held up a hand. We got distracted. And it's just as well that the games are tomorrow at that. The cops are going to be looking for Karl. Aristobulus is probably trying to figure out a way to swipe a set of books from a local, and the simple fact is that I'm scared. He rubbed a thumb against the spot where Lund's henchman had cut him. I know I won't stop being scared until we get home. But will it stop, even then? He stood. Somehow the food didn't taste so good anymore. Rubbing at his hair with a thick flannel cloth that served as a towel, Ahira decided that Tomalo hadn't been bragging. Their suite at the Inn of Quiet Repose was broad and spacious, oozing comfort from the deep crimson carpet that tickled his ankles, all the way to the chandeliers overhead, scores of candles burning almost smokelessly, dripping only a sweet fragrance into the common room. Beeswax, perhaps? He sighed. And there was even half-decent plumbing, superior by local standards. Granted, the hot water for his bath had been taken, bucket by bucket, from a copper kettle, but at least it had been hot. He dropped to the floor next to his weapons and stretched out on his back, pillowing his head on his hands, letting his eyes sag shut. With a bit of luck, he could catch a nap before the others returned from dinner. And it was good to be alone, without having to worry about where the others were, what the others were doing. The world slowly faded away into the warm twilight of oncoming sleep. Shh! Hakim's whisper boomed. Don't wake him. He needs his rest.
Ahira opened his eyes. Thanks for the thought, anyway.
As the others filed into the room, he shrugged, deciding against slipping away to one of the sleeping rooms. There was much to talk about. They had to figure out what the next move was. Karl stretched out on a fur-covered couch and patted at his belly.
Sorry. Hey, you missed one hell of a good meal, though. I don't think I'll be able to eat for hours. How was your bath?
Restful. Ahira forced himself to sit up. Very restful. You all should try it a bit later. Doria sat beside him, hugging her knees. Why not now? You go get some sleep. We've got a long day tomorrow, what with the games and all.
Tomorrow? Then never mind.
He rubbed at his eyes. All right, everyone gather around. Let's get this over with. Hakim sat down next to Doria, followed by Karl, then Aristobulus, then Andrea. Ahira could almost see bands of tension flowing between her and Karl. It was evident in the way he avoided looking at her, and in the curious little pursed lips headshake that she would give every time she looked at him. Probably there was some intelligent thing to do, to get the two of them to agree to better than a coldly hostile coexistence. Trouble is, I don't have a single idea what that intelligent thing to do is. Oh well, what cannot be cured must be endured.
I'll go first, he said. I know where the gate is. I've got it right here. He tapped a finger against his temple. And I'll sketch out a map sometime tomorrow. Somebody pull a pencil and some paper from their pack. I don't have any.
I do. Andrea nodded. But how far is it?
Looks to be a fairly long haul from here. A month of traveling, easily.
Karl cocked his head to one side, a faint smile playing across his lips.
And once we get to Bremen, it'll be tougher, maybe. Almost certainly.
What do you mean? Ahira hadn't mentioned Bremen. He hadn't said anything about it since they'd all met at the fountain. Karl rubbed his hand across his face.
I had a talk with a friend. He says there's a big mother of a dragon under the mountain, guarding the gate, sleeping.
A friend? Andrea snapped. What sort of friend? Hakim raised a palm. Best not to talk about it. He's talking about the baby dragon that used to be a part of Pandathaway's sewage system. But it's best to keep quiet about it. We'd just better get ourselves together and get out of here. Could be the authorities are looking for us, even now.
Karl shook his head. I don't think so. We were down in the slums. The folks who live there probably won't be eager to talk to the cops, even if they saw us.
Walter sneered. You ever live in the slums, genius? Sometimes you have to talk to the cops, even when you don't want to. Aristobulus nodded his agreement. And when the sewage starts rising around their ankles, you know who's going to have to take care of it, and they won't like it. Not at all. Ahira didn't know what they were talking about, but the fact that Karl knew about Bremen, apparently knew more about Bremen than he did, was something that had to be explained. The best way, probably, would be to wait, to escape the worry of being overheard if they spoke in Arendra, or being labeled as strange if they talked in an unknown language like English. But too many precautions, too much paranoia, was in itself a chancy thing.
Just talk, Karl. Keep your voice low, by all means. But please tell me what the hell you're talking about.
Karl nodded slowly.
Fine. They have a funny sort of sewer system here. It dumps out into a pit, where the sewage used to be flamed into ash by a dragon. A young one.
Used to be? Andrea arched an eyebrow. I take it
doesn't anymore.
Karl smiled.
They had the dragon chained there. I didn't like that, so I let him loose. End of story.
He shrugged.
Probably not a big deal. All they have to do is get some high-ranking wizards down there every now and again to fire the slop into ash.
Ahira shook his head. The brainless?
How long ago? An hour or so before we met at the fountain. Why?
Andrea spoke up. Because probably the news is all over Pandathaway by now, and someone is going to be looking for whoever did it, stupid. I thought that Walter was just joking before. Tell me, Karl, have you ever thought about the consequences of... Shut up. That was from Doria, oddly enough. Her defending Karl made little sense. Tell me, Karl, did you think about the consequences? Karl didn't answer for a moment. He sat there tailor fashion, his body relaxed and loose, his eyes misty like an absurdly over-muscled Buddha.
To be honest, I didn't. It was important enough that consequences just didn't matter. I'm sorry if you're upset.
Upset? Andrea was almost hysterical. If they find out who did this, we could all get killed.
Doria's face clouded over.
He said that it was important enough, didn't he? I don't understand why, but maybe I don't have to. We all...
Andrea threw up her hands.
That's the trouble with you, she shrilled at Karl, ignoring Doria. You're always so damn intense about everything. That's why... Never mind.
She shook her head slowly, rubbing at her eyes.
It's done.
Ahira picked up on that.
Right. It's done.
He turned to Karl.
Did anyone see you three?
No. Karl chewed on his lower lip.
And besides, around here, the three of us aren't all that unusual looking. Maybe even if someone did see us, and someone else links that to Elegon getting away, it might not matter, Ahira finished.
Well, that wasn't likely, but at least it was a possibility. But let's not take chances. I don't want you three to be seen together in public until we're gone from Pandathaway. And we'd better arrange to get out of here soon as possible. And that means that you and I'd better do well enough in the games tomorrow so that we can buy what we need quickly and get out of here. He considered that for a moment. Better. We buy just what we need to get to Eric, and finish outfitting ourselves there. Aristobulus cocked his head to one side. I'll still need another 2 days in the library at least. I've gotten one of my spells back, but I need the fire spell, and I think with a bit of effort I could puzzle out the spell that would let me bring writing materials past the glyph.
No.
Ahira made that as final as possible.
We don't have time for all that. You and Andrea each have one spell to relearn. You do that tomorrow morning while we get ready to leave after the games.
Hakim lifted his head.
I've got a better idea. We could have Ari glow a blade or two. We ran into a smith who might pay nicely for it, if Doria handles the negotiations. And then he can relearn both that and his lightning spell. That way...
Good. Ahira nodded. And that's the way we do it. Where are these games taking place?
The thief spread his arms, embarrassed. To be perfectly honest, we got kind of
At the Colosseum, Aristobulus snorted. North side of the city. The odds makers set up their tables at dawn. Contestants have to be there by mid-morning. Anything else you need to know? It's fortunate that at least one of us spent some time asking questions.
Enough.
Ahira cut him off.
Spilled milk.
Doria?
Yes?
You and Walter take care of placing the bets on us. Don't go too deep into our money. But if Karl and I are as good as we think we are, we shouldn't have any problem winning. And since we're new here, I bet...
Doria nodded.
That you'll be undervalued. Fine. How much should we put down?
Karl spoke up.
That's not the way you gamble. Not if you know what you're doing. Figure out what we need, find out what the odds are, and then you'll know how much to bet.
Andrea stood and stretched.
Well, unless you've got something for me to do, I'm going to wash up.
She put her hand over her mouth to stifle a yawn.
And then get some sleep. That meal's going to my head.
She started to walk away, then stopped and turned.
One thing. What if you and Karl don't win?
Ahira shook his head. You're looking at it the wrong way. Now, Doria and Hakim, I want to go over what you've got to buy tomorrow, just at a minimum. That way you can price it out, and know what you'll have to bet in order to make the kind of money we need.
Andrea scowled down at him. What do you mean I'm looking at it the wrong way?
He sighed. She still hadn't worked it out?
Karl, tell her.
The big man shrugged.
Look at it this way. We don't have enough money to buy what we need to get out of Pandathaway, and this is the only way I can see of making it in a hurry. And whoever's in charge of this place is probably looking for me right now, and isn't likely to think all that highly of the rest of you, so...
So?
So we damn well better win, hadn't we?
And that brings us to the end of Chapter 10. This section is another of my favorite parts of the book, though I think I'll find myself saying that more and more as time goes on. The meeting with the dragon, Elegon, and Karl freeing him from his captivity are one of the most memorable moments in an already memorable book. More than anything, it helps display how Karl is growing to truly become a better person, both than he was in their homeworld, and better than he was when struggling with his Baroque persona. This chapter was quite editing heavy, with all the back-and-forth conversation between Elegon and Karl. Please let me know how you like the effects I'm using, or if you think I should try something different. Thank you once again for listening. Have a good night.